In just 36 seconds, everything changed. One comment, one moment, one flash of royal arrogance, and suddenly, the carefully controlled interview became something else entirely. Seth Meyers has spent over a decade behind his desk, navigating every kind of guest imaginable. He's handled politicians who dodge questions, celebrities who overshare, comedians who bomb, and divas who demand. He knows how to keep things light, how to redirect tension, how to make even the most awkward moments feel manageable. But on this particular Thursday night, nothing in his years of experience could have prepared him for what walked through that curtain. Prince Harry arrived with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and an attitude that suggested everyone in the building should be grateful for his presence. Within 20 minutes, that smile would be gone. Within 25, Seth would do something he'd never done before, end an interview mid-segment and ask a guest to leave. Within 30, a duke would storm off the late-night stage to the sound of audience boos, leaving behind viral footage that would be replayed for years. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and smash that like. Now, let's get into exactly what happened that night. The late-night band was playing as the show returned from commercial break. Seth Meyers sat behind his familiar desk, note cards arranged neatly, his expression the same warm, slightly mischievous look that had made him a late-night staple. Welcome back, everyone. Our next guest is someone who's been at the center of some of the biggest headlines in the world. He's a prince, a podcaster, a memoirist, and he's here tonight to talk about his latest project. Please welcome Prince Harry. The audience applauded enthusiastically as Harry emerged from behind the curtain. His smile was wide, but somehow performative, the expression of someone who'd been trained from birth to look pleasant whether he felt it or not. He crossed the stage with confident strides, shaking Seth's hand briefly before settling into the guest chair with a posture that somehow managed to convey both relaxation and tension simultaneously. "Thanks for being here," Seth said, his voice warm and genuine. "Thanks for having me," Harry replied. But there was something in his tone, something slightly off, like he was already annoyed before anything had even happened. Seth jumped right in. "So, you've been living in California for several years now. How's the adjustment been? Are you officially an American at this point?" Harry tilted his head, a slight smirk playing at his lips. "I wouldn't say American. I'd say I'm someone who's found a place where I can actually live authentically. Not everyone gets to do that, you know? Not everyone has the courage to make the choices I've made." There was a slight shift in the room. The audience wasn't sure if he was being humble or the opposite. Seth nodded, keeping his smile. "Of course. So, tell us about your latest project. What can people expect?" "I think people can expect truth," Harry said, leaning forward. "Real truth. Not the sanitized version that gets filtered through palace communications or tabloid distortions. Something genuine. Something that actually matters." "Right," Seth said carefully. "And this project, it's important to you." "Everything I do is important," Harry cut in. "I don't waste my time on things that don't matter, unlike some people." Seth's eyebrows raised just a fraction. "Well, that's great. Having passion for your work is—" "Passion isn't enough though, is it?" Harry interrupted. "You need vision. You need the ability to see beyond what everyone else sees. That's what separates people who actually create change from people who just talk about it." The audience was quieter now. This wasn't the fun, light banter they were used to on late night. Seth shifted in his seat. "I'm sure a lot of people work very hard to create change in their own ways." Harry laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. "Hard work? Please. I've seen what passes for hard work. Most people have no idea what real dedication looks like. They think showing up is enough. They think doing their little jobs and going home is some kind of accomplishment. It's actually quite sad." Seth's smile was getting tighter. "Well, I think our audience works pretty hard too." "Do they?" Harry looked out at the crowd with an expression that could only be described as dismissive. "I mean, I'm sure they try. But trying and actually making a difference are very different things. I've spent my life trying to make a real impact. Most people just exist." Now the audience was uncomfortable. Several people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed nervously. Seth took a breath. "Let's get back to your project. What inspired you to—" "What inspired me?" Harry cut him off yet again. "I'm constantly inspired because I'm constantly aware of what's happening in the world. Most people just sleepwalk through life. They consume content without questioning it. They believe what they're told by media outlets like this one. I've never been like that. I've always seen through the facade." Seth nodded slowly. "Okay, so your project challenges people to think differently." "It challenges people to think, period," Harry snapped. "Not differently, just to actually use their brains for once instead of accepting everything they're fed by entertainment shows that pretend to be meaningful." Seth's jaw tightened slightly. "I'd like to think we do some meaningful work here. Would you?" Harry leaned back, crossing his arms. "Because from where I'm sitting, this is exactly the kind of superficial content that distracts people from real issues. You sit here every night making jokes while the world burns, and everyone laughs and applauds and goes home thinking they've engaged with something important. But they haven't. They've just been entertained, and entertainment isn't change. The room went silent, completely silent. Seth stared at him. I'm sorry. Are you saying this show doesn't matter? Harry shrugged. I'm saying most of television is a distraction. People use it to avoid dealing with real problems. They watch these shows and they laugh and they clap, and nothing actually improves. Nothing gets better. It's just noise. Seth's expression hardened, though his voice remained controlled. Well, I'd like to think we do more than make noise. We try to inform, to entertain, to what? Harry interrupted again. To make people feel good about themselves for half an hour? That's not change. That's not impact. That's just filler. Content that exists to sell advertising. Let's be honest about what this actually is. Right, Seth said, his patience clearly wearing thin. But you came on the show. You agreed to be here, so obviously you think there's some value in... I came here because my team said it would be good for visibility, Harry said bluntly. Not because I think this is some amazing platform. Let's not pretend this is anything other than what it is. A promotional stop on a media tour. The audience gasped. Actual gasps. Seth sat back in his chair. Wow, okay. Well, thank you for your honesty, I guess. You're welcome, Harry said, completely missing or ignoring his sarcasm. Honesty is important. Too many people in this industry just say what they think others want to hear. They're sycophantic and fake. I refuse to do that. I have integrity. Integrity, Seth repeated. Right. So, when you agreed to come on this show that you apparently think is meaningless, that was integrity. Harry's eyes narrowed. I think you're twisting my words. I'm using your words, Seth corrected. Your exact words. You said television is a distraction. You said this show is just noise. You said you're only here because your team told you to be. Those are your words, not mine. Context matters, Harry snapped. You're taking what I said out of context. We're literally in the context right now, Seth said, his voice rising slightly. This is the context. You're sitting here on my show, insulting the audience, insulting me, and then claiming I'm taking things out of context. I didn't insult you. You said what we do here doesn't matter, Seth stated firmly. You said it's empty noise. You said people who watch are just sleepwalking through life. How is that not an insult? Harry threw his hands up. This is exactly what I'm talking about. People are so sensitive. They can't handle honest criticism. Everything has to be wrapped up in compliments and fake smiles. I'm trying to have a real conversation, and you're getting defensive. I'm not defensive, Seth said, his voice controlled, but his frustration evident. I'm responding to someone who came onto my show and decided to spend the entire interview being condescending to everyone in this room. Condescending? Harry's voice went up an octave. I'm being honest. There's a difference. Just because you don't like what I'm saying doesn't make it condescending. I've spent my whole life being told to be quiet, to not share my truth, to play along with systems that don't serve anyone but the powerful. I won't do that anymore. You told the audience they sleepwalk through life, Seth listed off. You said most people don't actually think. You said their hard work isn't real accomplishment. You implied that you're somehow superior to everyone here because of your vision. That's not honesty, Harry. That's arrogance. Harry stood up abruptly. I don't have to sit here and be attacked. Attacked? Seth actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've spent the last 10 minutes attacking everyone except yourself. I've been trying to have a normal interview, and you've turned it into whatever this is. This is me refusing to play your little game, Harry said, his voice sharp. This whole setup, the fake laughs, the scripted questions, the pretending that any of this matters. I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who expected me to perform, to say the right things, to make everyone comfortable. I won't do it anymore. I've earned the right to speak my truth. I'm not asking you to perform, Seth said, standing up now too. I'm asking you to show basic respect to the crew who worked to have you here, to the audience who came to see a show, to me, who invited you as a guest. That's not performance. That's decency. Decency, Harry scoffed. You want to talk about decency? What about the decency of the media that's hounded me my entire life? What about the decency of the tabloids that chased my mother to her death? What about the decency of an institution that refused to protect my wife? And now you're lecturing me about decency? Seth's expression shifted. There was genuine sympathy there, but also firmness. What happened to your mother was a tragedy. The treatment you and your wife received was often unfair. I'm not disputing any of that. But I'm not the tabloids, Harry. I'm not the institution. I'm a guy with a late-night show who invited you here to have a conversation. And you've responded by insulting everyone in this building. I'm speaking truth. You're being cruel, Seth interrupted. And you're dressing it up as honesty. You can tell the truth without being unkind. You can be authentic without treating everyone else like they're beneath you. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. I'm not treating anyone like they're beneath me. You literally said most people just exist while you make real impact. You said the audience is sleepwalking through life. You said my show is meaningless noise. Harry, that is textbook condescension. That is exactly what it looks like to treat people as beneath you. Harry's face reddened. That's your interpretation. That's everyone's interpretation. Look around you. Harry glanced at the audience. They stared back at him, some angry, some shocked, some just deeply uncomfortable. No one looked supportive. "I'm expressing my perspective," Harry started. "You're expressing contempt," Seth corrected. "And you're doing it while demanding that everyone respect yours. You want empathy for your struggles while showing none for anyone else's. You want to be understood while refusing to understand. That's not honesty or authenticity. That's just entitlement." "Entitlement?" Harry's voice rose dangerously. "Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed? I gave up everything, my family, my country, my entire way of life, to build something real. And now I have to sit here and be lectured by a talk show host about entitlement?" "You gave up palaces to live in a mansion," Seth said quietly. "You gave up royal duties to do Netflix deals. You gave up one form of privilege for another. That's your right, and I'm not judging your choices. But don't act like you've suffered more than everyone else. Don't act like your struggles are the only ones that matter. Don't come on my show and tell my audience that their lives are meaningless compared to yours. I never said that. You absolutely did, and the fact that you can't see it is exactly the problem." Harry pointed at Seth, his hand shaking slightly. "You're just like all the rest, pretending to be sympathetic while actually looking for ways to tear me down. That's what media does. That's what it's always done." "I haven't torn you down," Seth said calmly. "I've responded to your words. Every criticism I've made has been about things you actually said in this conversation, with cameras rolling. I haven't made anything up. I haven't twisted anything. I've just refused to accept being treated poorly. And somehow, that makes me the bad guy? You invited me here to humiliate me. I invited you here to promote your project. You're the one who turned it into a confrontation. You're the one who came in swinging. I've been trying to redirect this interview to something productive for 15 minutes. And every time I try, you find a new way to insult someone." Seth took a long breath. "You know what? I think we're done here." Harry blinked. "Excuse me?" "We're done," Seth repeated. "This interview is over. I'm not going to continue to give you a platform to insult everyone in this room." "You can't just end the interview," Harry protested. "Actually, I can. It's my show, and I get to decide when a guest has crossed the line. And you crossed it about 5 minutes ago. I gave you chances to pull back, to redirect, to show that maybe this was all just nerves or miscommunication. But it wasn't. This is just who you are when you're not being handled." Harry's face flushed red. "This is unbelievable. You invite me here, and then you kick me off because I won't play along with your little charade. I'm asking you to leave because you've been disrespectful, dismissive, and frankly cruel," Seth said, his voice steady. "Not because you won't play along, because you've been genuinely unkind to people who did nothing to deserve it." "Fine," Harry snapped. "I'll leave, gladly. This was a waste of my time anyway." "Then we agree on something," Seth said quietly. Harry ripped off his microphone, the wire tangling for a moment before he yanked it free. "You're going to regret this," he hissed. "I don't think I will," Seth replied calmly. "Do you know who I am?" Harry's voice rose. "Do you have any idea the kind of platform I have? The audience I reach? You've just made a huge mistake." "The only mistake I made was not ending this sooner," Seth said. "Goodbye, Harry." Harry's mouth opened and closed. He looked like he wanted to say more, wanted to fire back with something devastating, but he couldn't seem to find the words. The audience was staring. The cameras were rolling. Everyone was watching him stand there, speechless. "I said goodbye," Seth repeated, his voice firm. For a moment, it seemed like Harry might refuse to leave, like he might plant himself in that chair and refuse to move. But then something shifted in his expression. Maybe it was the realization that he'd lost control. Maybe it was the awareness that every second he stayed made things worse. He turned on his heel. "This show is a joke anyway," he threw over his shoulder as he walked. "And yet, you agreed to be on it," Seth called after him. "Funny how that works." Harry didn't respond. He just kept walking, his footsteps echoing through the suddenly silent studio. But he couldn't resist one final moment. Right before he reached the exit, he stopped, turned around, and looked directly at Seth. "You're nothing," he said, his voice cold. "You and this show and everything you think you built, it's nothing. You're an entertainer playing at relevance while people like me actually change the world." The audience erupted, not in applause, but in boos, actual boos. They booed him loudly, unmistakably, a wall of disapproval that filled the studio. Harry's face went from red to white. He didn't expect that. He expected them to be on his side, maybe, or at least to be neutral. But they weren't. They were firmly, loudly, completely against him. He turned and disappeared through the exit without another word. Seth stood there for a long moment, the audience still buzzing with shock and outrage. Then he turned to the camera, his expression a mix of exhaustion and bemusement. "Well," he said, his voice surprisingly light, considering what had just happened. "That was something. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have our musical guest, who I'm told is actually happy to be here. We'll be right back." The cameras cut. The audience broke into applause, but it was different now. Supportive, sympathetic. They were clapping for Seth, for the way he handled it, for the dignity he maintained even when his guest had none. During the commercial break, Seth sat at his desk while someone handed him a glass of water. He took a long drink. His hands were shaking slightly, barely visible, but there. "That really happened, huh?" he said to his band leader, who was staring at him with wide eyes. "That really happened," Fred confirmed. Seth nodded slowly. Okay, let's do a show." And they did. The rest of the episode went on. The musical guest performed. Seth did his jokes. The audience laughed and cheered, and gradually the tension from earlier dissipated. But nobody forgot. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. Every social media platform, every news outlet, every group chat in America was sharing footage of Prince Harry being kicked off late night with Seth Meyers. The internet did what the internet does. It dissected every moment, every word, every facial expression. The moments that got replayed the most were predictable. Most people just exist. I actually make a difference. This show is just noise. I'm only here because my team told me to be. Do you know who I am? And Seth's responses, calm, measured, devastating in their simplicity. That's exactly what it looks like to treat people as beneath you. You want empathy for your struggles while showing none for anyone else's. The only mistake I made was not ending this sooner. Harry's team released a statement the next day, calling the interview hostile and deliberately provocative. They claimed he had been ambushed and set up for failure. Seth addressed it briefly on the following night's show. "I've seen the statement from Prince Harry's team, and I just want to be clear about something. The full, unedited interview is available for anyone who wants to watch it. Every question I asked was normal, basic stuff. How are you? Tell us about your project. How's California?" The only unusual thing about that interview was his responses. He came in determined to be offended, and he found reasons to be offended. That's not my doing. That's just what happened. The audience applauded wildly. "Look," Seth continued, "I don't enjoy what happened. I've done thousands of interviews, and I've never had to ask a guest to leave. That's not fun for anyone. But I'm also not going to apologize for setting a boundary. When someone comes onto your show and spends 20 minutes insulting you, your audience, and your entire profession, you have a choice. You can laugh it off and let it go, or you can say, actually no, this isn't acceptable." I chose the second option. He paused, looking directly into the camera. "Here's what I've learned from this. You can be a prince, a celebrity, the most famous person in any room, and still need to treat people with basic respect. Titles don't exempt you from decency. Trauma doesn't give you permission to be cruel, and no matter how important you think you are, you're not too important to face consequences for your behavior." The interview lasted less than 20 minutes total. 20 minutes that got replayed and dissected and analyzed for months afterward. 20 minutes that became a defining moment, not just for Harry's public image, but for the conversation about entitlement, accountability, and what happens when someone who thinks they're untouchable discovers that respect isn't demanded, it's earned. What do you think? Was Seth right to end the interview, or should he have handled it differently?